How are you doing? Really? As I've done presentations over the years, I am always haunted by the fact that what people hear, they often forget, but stories and visuals, jokes even, people remember those because they visualize what is being said, which is one of the most powerful parts of the brain when it comes to retention. So, what I want to do is a case study. Not only are we going to do a visual case study, but we're going to personalize it based on your experience. So here's what I want you to do. As you listen to this, I want you to bring to mind the worst manager you ever saw. Everyone, not just you, hated working for this person. So they're hands down the worst example of a leader. So let's get that person pictured in your mind. Here's a scenario. You're walking down the hallway. And as you approach the elevator, you've got to get in there. And as you walk in, there he is, the worst manager in the department. And you try to be polite and acknowledge his presence. And I use this greeting all the time, which is, how are you doing? Hey, Lieutenant, how are you doing? I use that as a greeting. But if you really think about it, I ask him a question. How are you doing? If he sees that as a question on how he's doing, how would he answer that? Would he say, uh, not good. I'm the worst manager in the agency. I suck as a lieutenant. I never communicate. I don't deal with problems. I don't back up my people. And not only verbally is he saying this, but you see he's kind of sad. And he says this. It's like when I came to work this morning and I took off my jacket, I pulled out my spine. I'm just a terrible manager. As you hear that, is that what he's going to say? What I just described is who he is really. Everybody around him, multiple witnesses see the same person, selfish, etc., a coward in many ways, in love with himself. What would he really say if this was the real deal and he saw that as a question? And how would he naturally, and that's a key word, naturally reply based on his perception, keyword? What would he say? He would say, well, I'm the best manager here. I should have been promoted to captain. I'm surrounded by nothing but idiots and butt kissers. Non-verbally, also, which is a very powerful form of communication, you see on his face arrogance and anger. So the way people view him is not the way he views himself. Why would he say that he's the best manager, so forth and so on? Because that is his perception that has now become his reality. I want to repeat that. That is his perception that has been repeated to himself over and over. He meditates on how good he is and how everybody else is an idiot. He's a me person, and he's always conversely pointing at other people as idiots. And he believes this. And I want to scare you with something. He believes this so strongly. And I've come across lots of people like this. They believe it so strongly. I honestly believe if you put them on a polygraph and say, are you the best manager? Should you have been the one promoted to captain? He'd say, yes. And he would pass the polygraph because the polygraph picks up indications of deception. But his whole mind and central nervous system believes that what he is saying is the truth. It is settled in his mind. He has lost the reality of how he's really doing. Why does he do that? This is natural and normal for prideful me people to think it's all about them. They always focus on looking down at others and they don't see their own failures and weaknesses. And if they do something wrong, they blame it on other people. So they throw ownership for this problem away, say it's not my fault. Basically, in a way, they're a king or queen who thinks they're perfect. And it's interesting, Solomon said 3,000 years ago, every person is justified in their own mind. And what we're going to talk about is, why do people come to that point in their lives that they have a delusional view of themselves? And it's interesting, the Greek word for pride, which was developed back during the height of the Greek kingdom over 2,000 years ago, the Greeks were very visual in their words and communication. And the word for pride means to look down on people. The first word picture was a person staring down at people. And if you look at the kind of the introduction to this whole series, it has a person standing up, pointing down at people. And that is their mindset. They are arrogant people. They point at other people. But the Greeks made an interesting observation. Not only did they recognize that this person thinks they're superior, the next word picture was that they're surrounded by heavy smoke and fog, that they are blinded by the fog and smoke that obscures to them how people really perceive them. In other words, they're blind. They're blind to this on how they're doing. And why is that the case? Because we're naturally have a high view of ourselves. I mean, look at little ones. They get real angry if they don't get their way. That's natural, but let me emphasize this. The real reason for this is, even though pride is normal, the reason pride gets stronger and stronger is because we do not tell these people the truth about how they're really doing. The reason they believe they're doing well is because we don't tell them they're not doing well. We don't care enough about others and tell them when they are being a jerk, they're being stupid. And you've heard the expression, ignorance is bliss. It is. I mean, as far as they know, they're doing great, even though everybody around them sees that they're failing. And as you meditate on that and think about that, I'm going to blindside you. Not only does that ineffective manager not see his real life and effectiveness, but we all do that. Please listen to what I'm saying. Let's take ownership that as human beings, we all tend to be blind on how we are doing, and that we're not doing what we're supposed to do. And I want to say this, at the end of the day, the biggest thing I think I've learned is the role of self-deception, that men and women do not see themselves in a realistic view. It is the proverbial elephant in the room, because in our silence, no one challenges them. And let's be honest, that's the natural thing to do around ineffective managers and ineffective people in general. We fear, I don't want to say anything or I'm going to get in trouble. He's going to probably yell at me. And so what happens is our silence reinforces this delusional view of themselves. So what's the solution to this? You've got to get the other people who see the real you tell you what that is. They must tell us the truth and bring us back to the reality when we make mistakes, when we're acting like we're God's gift to the organization, when we're being a coward. They have to do that. They have to be our seeing eye dogs. Because of our blindness, we need those seeing eye dogs to keep us on the right path, or we're going to step off the curve and get run over because we're blind. You have to have other people constantly remind you when you're not doing what you do, when you're not doing what you need to do. The biggest enemy, and I want to keep emphasizing this, the biggest enemy in our lives is the person in the mirror. It's not the captain. It's not the person over there, or our spouse or the chief or whatever. It is us. We only have control over ourselves, and we're never going to get control of ourselves if we don't see that we're the problem. So, one of the things that we need to think about is how do we do that? One, we insist because of fear of man, because of fear of being honest with you, you have to tell people, I need you to tell me the truth. If I'm being stupid, say something. And the only way they're going to be honest with you if you demand it and tell them, I need you to help me. It's interesting. Solomon said, faithful are wounds of a friend. And that's a great quote. Say, I need you to wound me when I need it. I need you to remind me when I'm being stupid or a coward or I'm obnoxious and I'm not dealing with a problem employee. And remind them that they're not helping you when they keep their mouth shut, which is perfectly natural. Another way we can do that is 360 evaluations. We've mentioned that in another series, but have people under you and beside you fill out anonymous, often comprehensive evaluations of how you're doing in particular areas of communication and other things with a little narrative section to point out you always are on your phone when I'm trying to talk to you, you don't deal with the problem employee, et cetera, et cetera. That in that system, you get a multitude of people telling you what you're doing. And let me say this, if there's 15 people that filled it out, one of them hates you and one of them thinks you hung the moon, that's not important. It is the ones in between. And if everybody else says, yeah, you're overall, you do well, but you're bad in the area of following through, you don't tend to schedule your time to spend with people, that's the kind of thing you need to do. I just want to encourage you at the end of the day, you can't do this by yourself. You need to ask people to help you live in reality. And I want to please encourage you with this. If you have friends like that you develop and continue to ask them to do that, you'll find that they will also ask you how they could be better. And together, in the power of that group, with mutual accountability and mutual encouragement to do the right thing, you will be amazing. And so will they. That is the power of the group. That's why the military does that better than we do. They emphasize respectful insubordination. And so let's don't be blind. Let's get CNI dogs in our lives who help us do this. Because if we don't, we're going to be that person on the elevator that we think is an idiot, but we're an idiot like that too. If we don't ask people to tell us the truth. And when they do, they make us more effective. They make us more we people that work with other people because we see that we need them. And that mutual we perspective makes it healthy for relationships and being effective and developing a great culture to work in. You can't do this by yourself because if you do this, you are so blind. And we've got to overcome that smoke and fog and live in reality that we're the biggest idiot in our lives. And that's the humility that marks a leader, that makes them so unique among people. Thanks for joining us on the They to We Leadership podcast. If today's episode helped you think differently about management, take a moment to reflect and then apply it. Because real leadership isn't what you say, it's what you do next. And the real enemy is our pride and blindness on how we are really doing. Only with the help of others can we truly make an impact on those around us.